bring up a few days ago, Alan Watts and his thoughts on Zen Buddhism.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to just take that question in a second. I want to show everyone something. There's some goddamn horses walking on the beach right now. Look at them. Check out. They just walked into my field of view. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so sorry. That was an unexpected incident. As far as Alan Watts, yeah, I know, right? I'm surprised the horses don't try to drink the water, because horses are pretty dumb animals. They do a lot. They're really stupid.
I don't know.
No, I used to have a horse. I know they're not smart animals.
But no animal is that dumb that it would drink salt
true.
water and be like, "Why am I still thirsty?"
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I've been sleeping in the van using the Alan Watts audio archive from the Internet Archive.
Sick, yeah.
And as a way to just have something to listen to as I'm falling asleep, because I feel like podcasts engage my brain in a way that makes it hard to sleep. But when I'm listening to Alan Watts, I just can have a cup of tea and smoke a little bit and burn some incense. And it's just the perfect thing to just wind down your evening with. Just listen to a philosophical lecture from some guy from the 60s talking about things that are not the present world at all. They're these timeless ideas, which is super cool. But I've been listening to just a bunch of those lectures, and I can't remember exactly what did I mention about Zen Buddhism? What was it that? What was the context on that?
The bullet point was Alan Watts's take on Zen Buddhism. That was it.
Oh, right. I'm trying to remember. I remember now what was the salient? Oh yeah. So he apparently has this view that Zen Buddhism is in the context of Japanese society, it's kind of like a program to rescue one from one's own culture, rescue oneself from their own culture. So because the nature of Japanese society is that it's extremely ritualized, and that can become kind of oppressive in some instances. And so Zen, the way Buddhism evolved within the context of Japanese society, is that it's like this program to create surprise almost, where the ultimate wisdom of Zen is basically that if you have to ask what it is, you don't get it. It's like this institutional. It's like an institution based on an inside joke, kind of. And I'm not doing it justice, but yeah, I don't know. I wish I would have had more developed thoughts about this. I just put that in the chat because I found it very compelling. I'd have to re-listen to that.
I like the idea of, I'll just go over here until he pulls out.
All right.
I like the idea of this institution in their culture arising to help them out of their culture and accommodate for how rigid their society is and was. That seems more practical than it seemed like Christianity and the Western world didn't do that. It wasn't this other part of a cultural equation to help people be balanced. It was this Christianity made things more rigid but it's not like I have any context for what things were like in the old times. But there's so much, like, there's so many sects of Zen Buddhism, though, that are like, some are like super strict and have all these fucking rules and rituals, and others aren't. And I can sort of understand the inside joke statement of it. Like, if you have to ask what it is, then you don't get it. Like, on the one hand, that's really fucking stupid, and it's and it's just like, it's just a way for certain people to say they have the knowledge, and the peons will never be able to have the special Zen Buddhism knowledge. But on the other hand, I understand it in terms of a meditative mindfulness practice. I think of Eckhart Tolle and his book, The Power of Now, and the whole book is trying to instill an awareness in the reader of presence and being in the present moment as fully as possible. And he says in one paragraph that you don't do it, like it's not something you do, because that like automatically presupposes that you are outside of this present moment of being prior to like doing something special to get into it. And he's saying like, you don't do anything, you're just here, and you just find yourself here spontaneously almost, I guess. So it's like, brings up these apparent paradoxes. I don't know. Have you ever read Eckhart Tolle or tried to like meditate?
Yeah, I haven't actually read those books, but I'm sort of familiar because someone I used to know was into that shit, and I understand Eckhart Tolle's general thrust based on watching some videos of him talking with some other people, and he's very much seems to me to be sort of in the vein of a Ram Dass type person who is
Sure.
kind of, yeah, just like yeah, sort of like a be here now type person who is like saying, well, the present moment is the only thing that's real. There's really no difference between you, inside of you, and the outside of you. It's like, and Alan Watts touches on that too. That's one of Alan Watts' central themes, is that um, trying to like meditate on your breath, because your breath is a very special case, because it's something that is simultaneously voluntary if you're paying attention to it, but it's also automatic and involuntary if you forget about it. So it's like this perfect little thing that if you get with your breathing, you can realize that everything is kind of like that too, and that everything, there's a perspective you can take on it, that you can feel that the world is kind of doing you at the same time as you're doing in the world. Like there's this relationship between self and other. They're both like, what you're doing wouldn't make any sense unless it was embedded in a larger system of the world, and your thoughts and your experience is dependent upon this whole system and the whole context that you're inside of. So that's kind of like its own version. That's its own restatement of this idea of being here now, because it's like, well, where's here? Here is almost like, to me, the space that's outside of your imagination of where things are. Like, you're outside of the concept of where you are. There's just the direct reality of where you are in every moment. And that's not in the past or future. So whenever you're thinking about the past or future, that's a pretty good signal that you're not experiencing reality directly. Like what Alan Watts always does is he has a gong, and he's like, goes on some large philosophical discourse, and then always ends it with, reality is, and it like makes the sound, and so he doesn't even give it a word. It's like just a direct noise.
Sure.
I don't know. I think that's pretty much what Alan Watts' whole thing comes down to, is this central idea that symbols are a substitute for reality. And I don't think I've never heard anyone articulate it better than he does, through all these multifarious examples and digressions into historical cultures that have, like Zen Buddhism, that have built entire institutions around the same idea that the abstractions are not the world. The map is not the territory. Your ego is not yourself. They're all representations. And he goes through and probably is a little bit partial towards interpreting historical cultures in the light of his understanding, his central understanding, but it's still valuable because I think there's some truth to it.
Yeah, there's a lot there. The breath is handy because you can only do it in the present moment. Like, that's the only place you can get to the next breath, is in the present moment. But thoughts of the past and thoughts in the future themselves can only occur in the present moment. And if you can, developing a mindfulness practice is like getting sensitized to the smell of it, maybe, to use a metaphor. And this objectivity can blossom in your mind, where you can have thoughts and trains of thought and reminiscences of the past, perhaps, and still have that very clear, developed spaciousness that meditation develops. And those thoughts occur in a bigger context of this spacious witness, and they don't you don't mistake those thoughts for reality so much if you have spent more time trying to just deal with raw data reality as such. Things as symbols, as representations of reality. Like, I immediately go from there to like, well, everything is a fucking symbol. Physical objects are symbols of something more hyper real than the physical dimension we see. But that's used in these religions, or in these practices and these formalized understandings.
Yeah.
That principle of the symbolic nature of physical reality is used sometimes to denounce the aspects of physical reality we find ourselves ensconced in. And I think that's very wrong. I think we only get to whatever's more real by a full embrace of the reality we find ourselves in. Like, I'm not so sure we have to like denounce physicality to have some confrontation with God. Like, you have to open your eyes and see the living God of the van you're in, and the wood above your head, and the air.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, no, that reminds me of another kind of like another Alan Watts-ism with regard to this, with regard to whether or not we're living in a materialistic culture. And he said something like, you know, people say that the West is a very materialistic culture, but it's really not true, because a true materialistic culture would value material, but we actually don't value material. We value abstractions, and that's why we don't have nice things. We create ugly things. We create cities that are unlivable. We create buildings that are ugly. We create cheap. Our food is terrible. We're failing to actually respect the nature of material, that it can sort of be like a true materialistic culture would have a very comfortable life and beautiful aesthetics, and everything would work perfectly um, on a physical level. And
Yes.
I'm like, that's true. Like, actually, we're a civilization of the mind. We live in a web of abstractions, and the physical reality is just the like, you can even see it in the way we build things. A building, an architecture, is like an idea. It's a simple. Everything is like, you're not paying attention to all the parts. You're creating this just simple idea of like just a big square, and then filling in the gaps, and that creates a kind of poverty, where you're actually living in a culture that doesn't is not in touch with the wood and like air and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I think you're very right about that. Um, and yeah, Alan Watts has kind of elaborated on that idea in other ways too, about like whether or not it's a good idea to be like an aesthetic. Like, did he presented Buddhism, that basically the whole point of attempting to discipline oneself, following rules, becoming an ascetic, trying to conquer your mind, is just like a device. It's not like a rhetorical device, but it's almost like it's like a practical device for convincing you, not intellectually, but causing you to realize that that entire enterprise is pointless. And then when you realize that there is no way to become enlightened, that's what enlightenment is. And so this is very difficult to explain, because it's not something that can be explained. It's something that has to be kind of encountered. So he sees things like Zen Buddhism, or Buddhism generally, as like a way to cause a fool to persist in their folly, so that they'll encounter the thing that's blocking them and realize it themselves. Or another way of saying that is um, like anyone, like saying that like anyone who goes to a psychiatrist ought to have their head examined. So
It's a very
it's
witty
like if you,
remark.
if you think you have a problem and you need to be fixed, and that there's something wrong, and that you need to be enlightened, you should try for a while, see how far you get, and then you'll maybe realize that it's like something that maybe you're just chasing up the wrong tree, and that you're trapped in this idea that somehow there's going to be some answer to everything, that if you just figure it out, you're going to get it, you know? Um,
Yeah, you're pointing at a kind of principle where if you go from psychiatrist to psychiatrist asking what's wrong with me, you're gonna find a bunch of answers to that question. But the problem is asking that question in the first place. And
exactly.
it creates a core tenet of there is something wrong with me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not the most effective way to reach more fulfillment and more contentment and enjoyment of your present moment. If you want those results, you have to ask different sorts of questions, like what is exciting me today, and what would be a worthy thing to do this year that would make me wake up in the mornings excited to be alive. Um, and in going for enlightenment itself, yeah, I can understand that like that puts you in the position of a seeker, and a seeker can become addicted to the seeking and has to let go of the seeking part of his ego at some point if he ever wants to settle down to the actual experience in front of him and start unpacking what's already here. Um, uh, on the other hand, I do think you could, if you had some clear articulation of what being enlightened even means for you, then you could achieve that. Just in the same way that any goal clearly articulated by a human mind can be achieved. But I wonder, Stuart, what being enlightened would mean for you.
You're asking the right questions. Um,
What would that experience look like?
I think it would be um, a state of never doubting myself. I think that would be what enlightenment is for me. Uh, of just kind of shaking off once and for all um, this sense that I'm on some kind of existential probation, that I'm like a human in this world, and that the choices I make, the things I do, are somehow being evaluated or like judged. I think it's like probably my just upbringing or something, where I just grew up for years and years and years in like a conservative Christian context where I always thought that I'm being watched constantly
Ah,
for years. And I intellectually I haven't thought that, I haven't believed that for many, many years, but emotionally, I still have the same foundations that I look at myself. I carry around this sense that I'm somehow responsible for everything. And I think that like whether or not you're responsible for something has to be determined by experiments. You shouldn't assume that you are. You don't really know. You have to test that. Like I think that yeah, I think being enlightened would just be kind of like being able to let go of that sense of responsibility to the extent that in every moment you could feel completely free and capable of putting your entire self into every single interaction, or like whatever you're doing, just fully give yourself and become that thing, and never feel bad about it, never question it, never wonder, should I do this, or like what, like question the right, whether you have the right to do one thing or the other.
huh.
Um, I think it's what it is. Yeah, just like a sense of emotional liberation. I think for me would be enlightenment. But this is a very like this is my own personal psychology. I don't think this is a answer for everyone.
I don't think it should be either.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
there's as many different visions of enlightenment as there are people on the earth, and it should not be all one the same thing. 'Cause that'd be boring as fuck. It makes me think of my own languages I've developed with my own doubt over the
Hmm.
years. And maybe there was some point in the past where I imagined a state free of doubt and free of hedging my bets at every count. And I've given up on that and have opted instead for a confident, welcoming attitude towards my entire experience, which includes doubt when it's time for that. And when that part of me has something to say, by practice and persistence, I now manage to approach that doubt voluntarily and have a dialogue with it and see what it has to tell me. And then, and then when I get through that experience and come into a moment of full confidence and full focus, I don't question that because I already had the moment where I questioned things and I dealt with it and I came to some understanding that I earned myself with my own brain power. And so I understand why I feel confident in that next moment. So it's something the measure of confidence that I ever achieve day to day is something I've had to build myself.
You've questioned the questions.
Yeah.
You said, you know what? Who gives you the right to wonder if I have the right? See, that's dude, that's powerful, man. And that's what I guess that's what I'm seeking too, is kind of this just like a indifference to things that I can only step out of if I want to. I think animals have a certain dignity to them where they just
they're united.
Yeah, animals are present, and they are just like, I'm looking at, a bird, a seagull just goes like, it's just kind of like there, and then something happens and it kind of goes they're like the perfect little, they're like almost like a little wind vane for the Tao, you know what I mean? Like they're perfectly in just this equilibrium with the flow of things, because they don't have any other ideas about what they should do. They're just being pushed and pulled and swaying, and they never get far from this centered space. But like something which, like, go ahead. You're gonna talk.
It's not human to do that, though.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Like, I immediately think of Richard Bach and his first bestseller book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is about a seagull who is basically discontent to be a seagull.
And wants to fly and stuff.
Yes, he needs more.
Mm-hmm.
He needs more, and every other seagull looks at him like he's fucking insane. Like, this is great. Why do you need more than this seagull experience? And he strives and needs to do better and needs to get more out of experience and has to, like, change things. And
yes, I'm familiar with this book.
And that's the human
I think on some... I'm glad you brought that up, because I think on some unconscious level I might have chose... Well, actually, no. I think I chose a seagull because I'm looking at a seagull right now. There was one on the beach. That's probably the actual reason. But if I'm being honest, but that is... I do know that book, and it is a great book. And it was... what I was about to say was, I think, like what you said a few minutes ago about having like this kind of expansiveness, like this space. I think, like, we have to, as humans, we have to deal with this power of being able to create the past and future, and by like taming that and getting that in balance with ourselves. Like, at least in my own life, what I try to do is I think the main reason I try to cultivate this sense of present awareness is because I spend hours per day consciously entering into purely symbolic realms
Right.
when I'm writing code. And I think that the more I allow my off time to be spent like a bird, just not thinking, not planning, not conceptualizing, it's like I reserve my capacity to do that for work. And I am
Yes.
creating this castle in my mind. And to the extent that I'm able to create space of awareness, I can voluntarily and consciously fill that space. That space is the stage upon whatever I want to do.
Yes.
Because you know what it is? If you don't do that, it's just like having a messy bedroom where Jordan Peterson has entered the chat. Um, like, yeah, if you just have like shit all over the floor, you're not going to be able to create a studio there. You're going to be tripping over shit, and it's going to be terrible, and you're going to feel depressed, and you should feel depressed because you have clutter and you have nothing. Like I think if your mind is like that, you just have this constant dialogue, this constant little subverbal little chit chat thing where you're just like you're tripping over thoughts constantly, stumbling over your own thoughts. You're not going to have much of a workspace to put anything together in a way that is going to be exportable
Yes.
from your own mind.
Yes, that's very wise, and that is a very good way to utilize your human computer. Um, it makes me think of David Lynch and his meditation practice. He always talks about that he's been maybe for or okay, Eraserhead, so like 50 years straight now he's been meditating 20 minutes twice a day, once in the morning when he wakes up and once in midday. And you see the results of that mindfulness practice and what it's built for him in terms of capability. You see what that mindfulness practice is built by what he's able to achieve as a director. Like it culturally it goes under the radar what David Lynch has achieved, but it's like monolithic Beethoven architecture shit he's done in terms of orchestrating army of people under him to create these art house films, and like the amount of moving pieces he's able to hold in his mind and direct in this very living, spontaneous day-to-day way that yet has a floor plan and a storyboarded step by step by step, these are all the things that have to be done today process. Like it's like watching him direct behind the scenes the 18-hour art house film that was the latest Twin Peaks creation. Watching him direct that was like this sense of him juggling like 17 flaming batons at once. It was amazing. And it was all just resting on this rock solid stability of mind that he's built day by day by day by day by day every single day for 50 fucking years, where like nothing can fucking faze him.
Yeah, you need a foundation of stability to create something novel. You can't. That's just how systems work. Yeah, you have to have a place. You have to have a foundation for things. Um, I think that's the way that work. Like the cosmos is structured that way, where you have alternating layers of chaos and order, and that chaos on a smaller scale creates order, the potential for order on a larger scale. Like
Yes.
um like the way that if you look inside your body and you see like all the biochemical processes, all the negative feedback mechanisms, all of the little T cells eating other cells, and like all the little things consuming each other and stuff. If you were this level of a cell, you would think this is a bunch of random events, but then the net result of all those interactions creates a very stable homeostasis that you depend
Yes.
on as you live. And the same thing happens like in an economy. Businesses fail, businesses succeed, but at the end of the day is you create this higher level reality of stability that has represents the extracted wisdom of those interactions. And
Yes. And you get a
mhm,
healthy economy to the extent that you allow that chaos
exactly,
to exist.
precisely,
which
precisely.
is
Just
which
like
is
you have,
fucking miraculous. It's
it is.
miraculous to watch this world function to the extent
Mm-hmm.
that it's functioning so
It,
far.
it's
It,
seeking equilibrium,
yeah.
despite the best efforts of everyone who's trying to erect roadblocks.
Yes.
It's exactly the same. It's just like the way you have a stable mind is by allowing your thoughts to seek equilibrium, and by not blocking them off, shutting them down, by applying the principle of free speech and free market to your own personal internal psychology, and
Yes.
saying, well, this is a thought. Let's see what this thought can do.
Yes.
Let's let it prove itself. And if it fails, then now I have some information about this thought. It didn't work for me.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but if you start with this kind of command economy perspective where you're like, no, I am a brave person. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, like, it's an admirable goal, but there's a kind of temperance that where you have to, and I think this is what often gets confused or held up as the ideal of humility. Um, you shouldn't. I mean, and I'm thinking about this because last conversation we were talking about this humility, and I was thinking about it more, and I was like, I think a lot of times it's easy to mislabel, um, to confuse humility with openness, because
Yes.
you don't have to, like,
We're about to
openness
get.
doesn't. So imagine you have a thought, and you're seeing how it plays out. You're not sure about it, but a lot of times people who don't who change their minds, or like people who don't, yeah, basically people who change their mind. A lot of times changing your mind is due to a lack of confidence. And
Yes.
that is like when you change your mind when you shouldn't have. You actually had the right idea, but you encountered some resistance. You doubted yourself. You doubted your right to be the center of agency in your own world. And then you gave way, and you said, all right, fine, this is too
Yes.
much resistance. I don't want to stand with my intention. I'm just gonna like let it go. Okay, so that's, I guess, I don't know if it's really humility, but it's a kind of thing that is more of like a uh, abdication of your intentions on account of meeting resistance. And I think, in contrast to that, openness, from the outside it looks the same, that you can see someone changing their mind a lot, but the motivations are completely different, because the person, if you like, openness is, you know it's like, by analogy, it's allowing a system that's attempting to seek equilibrium and attempting to create and extract wisdom to do its thing, and allowing things to fail is actually a strategy to come up with, to like, it's like a meta strategy. It's like openness to the idea that you don't know exactly what you want. So what your strategy in the first place is to allow a process to happen, to inform you, to make better decisions, to get where you're going. And at no point is there any doubt about your own agency, your own intentions. It's rather sort of like creating kind of a space where your intentions, and allowing your intentions to be undefined without doubting the fact or the justification for their presence. And I mean, it was just kind of weird because I think a lot of times when people are under pressure, they feel the need to justify themselves very clearly, and so they'll make snap decisions. They'll make quick, impulsive things like, "This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is it." Like the person, you can imagine someone who's like down on their luck. They're beaten down. A lot of people, no one respects them, and so they wake up one day and they get this thought in their head that, you know, I gotta be really hard on myself. I gotta give myself no slack. I gotta get up every day at 5 a.m. and do this, and the other. And it's like you're kind of gambling with that because that's really not how you come up with a productive direction in life. You don't start by whipping yourself. You start by allowing yourself to fail and go through these. Like it almost requires like a confidence to be like, well, I don't need to be. I'm not proving myself to anyone. I'm just actually claiming what belongs to me, which is the right to exist, the right to try things, the right to fail, whilst maintaining in the back of my mind that this is leading somewhere that I want to go, and I have this kind of confidence that I know I just have to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like a meta, and I think this is circling back to the original thing I was thinking about, which is this my own personal vision of enlightenment is that I would like to expand that kind of generosity to my own intentions to the maximum possible degree so that I am never rushed. I'm never feeling like I need to justify anything. And I'm letting myself get answers completely from the world in terms of what the feedback I get, in terms of the experiments that I conduct with my own attitudes towards things, without having this preconceived idea like there's some kind of cosmic law code that goes like, that's verboten. Don't go down that path. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who decided that? Was it like fucking Hammurabi or something? Like in 4000 BC, like, thou shalt not murder. Like, how do I know that you shouldn't? I'm just kidding. But I mean, okay, if you take that to the extreme, animals, they eat each other sometimes,
They tend not to kill more than they need to stay alive.
They don't. No, they do exactly what is necessary.
And that's not murder. That's
it's not.
That's just feeding oneself.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have changing your mind in one sense and changing your mind in another sense. And in the first sense, I haven't changed my mind once since I decided to pursue music when I was 12 or so. I haven't changed my mind. And I think it would be wrong to change my mind. And that's why I'm persisting in following through on that decision, because I figure that's the measure of the worth of man, is his ability to follow through on the decisions he makes. Which brings you to the second use of changing your mind, which is needing to run simulations and entertain possibilities. And if you have a clear goal in your mind, you then are able to open or innocently entertain a zillion different options. Like in the course of formalizing my decision to be a musician, what did I do? I took guitar, and then I moved to bass guitar, and then I moved to a mix of piano and guitar and bass guitar, and then I moved to through a bunch of different bands that I was playing with, and then I gave up all those bands and started writing my own material and doing a singer-songwriter acoustic sort of journey. And then I finally landed on my relationship with Ade, and that was paired with a discovery of, oh, I should be a singer. That should be like my part of the band is singing. And so I changed my mind a bunch of times
Yeah.
through that whole journey that I just described. But I didn't change my mind in the basic sense at any point. Every opportunity I had throughout life to change my mind about being a musician was this kind of moral conflict and this chance to default on my own promise to myself or not.
Yeah, that's very interesting how that word, that phrase, change your mind has such a double meaning like that.
Like
Um,
I've and the third meaning of changing your mind, like for purposes of developing into a more complete entity. Like in that sense, I'm trying to change my mind every fucking moment of every day. But like there's a hierarchy of goals that make the changes of mind deliberate and meaningful and building towards a purpose. Not like I let the world change my mind whichever way the world feels like going. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah, it's just, I think, I don't know if I fully understand this yet because I think that's something very interesting about that like you can kind of see the dark side of being uh, a wind vane. It's been, like people have, like, that's even just been used as like a pejorative before, like, words for like politicians or whatever. It's like people who just
Yes.
go in what they just think, what is the easiest possible course of action, the minimum energy state, the minimum state of resistance. And you can't, leadership is incompatible with that attitude because you're making yourself invisible. You're not standing for anything. You're not instigating any change. But at the same time, if you don't have a certain flexibility, you'll be destroyed because and to encounter reality, to learn from reality, you have to let yourself be impressed by reality. And it's like, I think that developing the kind of conscious awareness that allows you to live with as much freedom as you can handle at any one time, in your own estimation, is kind of like an art form. Because and I guess this connects to the idea of having a foundation too. That, like, in order for your own internal economy to develop, and in order for your thoughts and your life experiences and your life to be able to build on itself in a way that it assembles smaller things into larger and larger structures and experiences, you have to be willing to allow yourself to have experiences, and you can't have experiences unless you encounter something you didn't count on. So you're exposing yourself to uncertainty in order to gather wisdom from uncertainty, take it back into your workshop, do something with it, equip yourself a little bit more to go out there and handle a little bit more. And just that it's like, yeah, entering into a kind of relationship with the world where you're allowing it to change you so that you can change it, so that it can change you, so that you can change it. And it's like this kind of I don't think it's captured in you can't say like one shouldn't change their mind or one should change your mind. It's like maybe you almost need like a different word for it. Like, you shouldn't doubt your mind. You should change your mind to the extent that it's necessary to grow your mind, or something like that. I don't know. I feel like the language doesn't capture this very well.
But there is a feeling to it. Like now I'm thinking of when I had a general plan to go to college to learn recording and be a recording engineer. And I changed my mind on that the moment I realized that that was based on false premises. I was choosing that career path because I was trying to get out of my decision to be a good musician on my own merit.
Oh,
And so it was this sneaky decision to just record other people as some sort of like, well, if I never try, then I can't say I can't like fail if I never try. Um, anyway, I'm starting to space out on waves of nicotine, so uh, I chose Zen Buddhism and Alan Watts as a topic. So why don't you choose something now?
all right. Um, let's talk about why boomers won't take psychedelics. I like that topic. So in the chat you suggested, um, why don't boomers just take the goddamn drugs they're so curious about? Why is McKenna so uniquely brave in admitting that he takes these things? Um, I mean, Terrence McKenna has an extraordinary amount of openness. I think that he has an image of himself that has latched on to the idea of being a like he's getting paid for being weird,
Yeah.
and he's built a career and a following and a persona and a notoriety around being this person, and he's been able to do that precisely because most people won't. So he has found a niche. I think that for the same mirror image reason, most, yeah, maybe I don't know what it's like to grow up in the world that boomers grew up in. Probably one of the, it seems just judging by the way boomers are, yeah, a kind of certain worry that like other people are going to look at you as unserious or gadfly or a crazy person or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain kind of social judgment that goes along with it, and it's stuck with them.
And it strikes me as ludicrous to a certain degree because of the exceptions to that and how remarkable those exceptions are. Like Terrence
Yeah,
McKenna,
yeah,
he made a big fucking difference by bucking that trend. And who else is someone who's bravely explored those things way past the point of taboo? Carl Jung, or Jung, he fucking went deep into the weirdest fucking shit possible, and he changed the world by his work doing that. So
yeah.
why are these people so afraid of that? But like as soon as I put that prompt into our chat, I immediately like answered my own question. Um, it was inspired by listening to Roland Griffiths talk to Jordan Peterson, and Roland Griffiths is at the head of all these psilocybin studies at Johns Hopkins University, and he, well, first of all, both of them very carefully avoided any implication that they had taken any of these substances ever themselves. And whenever Jordan Peterson would like come to a direct person to person question for Roland, like, what do you as a person think about what this shit is doing? It seems very powerful and very strong in its implications for reality itself. What do you think? And Roland just wouldn't fucking answer the goddamn questions because of this scientific objectivity that he
Mm-hmm.
felt like was his duty to not ever allow himself to be put in a position where he has to answer those questions. And uh, the very first impulse I had was just, okay, this is cowardice. You're a fucking coward, and you won't let your own mind like come to any actual fucking conclusions. How do you progress in your thought if you'll never let yourself be wrong and like say some fucking strong statements, Terrence McKenna style?
I
So
think the
that
problem is,
go ahead.
uh-huh, go ahead.
But
Well, I think the
I
problem.
still have more, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I think just as like a small aside, I think the thing is that he's under a certain kind of duress because he receives funding probably from public agencies and stuff like that, and it's illegal. And if he were to say that, it could fuck up his grant proposals. So it could be the charitable interpretation of that is not that it's not cowardice; it's kind of pragmatism because he realizes that he has to maintain at least the facade of objectivity in order to be able to keep the money flowing. I think
Yes.
that's so it's almost like fear. Like the environment, the threat in the environment makes it to where it's difficult to allow to be open. But anyways,
Yes, and that's where I went next in my thought, almost immediately, just by like continuing to listen to the whole episode. Like I came out of it with basic respect, bordering on awe for him and for all these people of the Boomer generation doing this work. It's a certain amount of it is cowardice, I think, but the larger portion of what's happening here is they are busy building an infrastructure for legalization, and they are very deliberately building a Trojan horse step by step in a way that can't be stopped. Like what
yeah,
Roland is building with this real fucking hard science applied to psilocybin, he's building something. He's building a Trojan horse that cannot be stopped, and that's what his objectivity and detachment is achieving. Is a fucking rock solid body of work that can't be denied and can't be stopped. And he is set on changing the whole fucking world by this work. Like, I think he is more or less aware of what he's doing in that sense and how to do it and how it needs to be done right now. And it needs to be done very delicately and very deliberately. And certain lines have to be held the entire time in terms of objectivity and detachment. And it's this very conscious building of a world where we can fucking take the drugs that are our birthright. And I just have so much almost worshipful respect for these people doing this work, because it's like it's of world-saving import, in my opinion. And he said that himself in the interview. He said, I think the human race depends on these studies."
yeah, he wouldn't say that unless he's taken them himself. That's the thing. He wouldn't. I think that's the implication. Anyone who hears him say that kind of knows he gave his answer in a
It
way
just
that.
like it
Mhm.
has this like stink of injustice, and like
Yeah, of course it does.
it just seems like mentally dangerous for Roland Griffith's own mental health to like have to not speak freely about things. It just seems
Well,
I don't know. It
it might. It is dangerous.
seems
Probably
like a knife's edge there.
it is dangerous for his mental health, but it might be necessary too. That the injustice of the situation, the stink of injustice, is just the way it is, and that injustice didn't come from him. That injustice that was there, and he's contending with it. Um, yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty fascinating to think that you know, like society just goes on, just chugs along, and behind the scenes, you have this kind of little, sleeper agents, saboteurs,
Yes.
trying to do the thanklessly do the thing that 99% of people aren't clued into. And what's even weirder about it is that it's been more or less in this situation for decades. It's tremendously surprising that society has managed to keep the lid on psilocybin for as long as it has. Perhaps that's a testament to the power of media and the way our culture is a culture of the spectacle, that we're easily distracted by um, like the way to disempower us is to distract us, not to try to stop us. You can't really stop people from doing anything, but you can distract them. You can shape their motivations to where they start focusing on and identifying with a particular kind of culture where they are ashamed to talk about the fact that they have thought about their own life and stuff like that, and have it's like we have a hangover. Maybe it's like this centuries long hangover towards, like, because we're coming from a place where we had previously had institutionalized in metaphysics, where like there was a kind of like how you see it cropping up these days, where like if you have your, like, it's weird, like when you express an opinion about your own body or your own health or your own, like, what's good for you, nutrition, medical advice, it always has to be followed by this little disclaimer, like, oh, well, I'm not a doctor. Like, what,
Yeah.
this kind of anxiety about just like, oh, I don't even know sure if I have a right to have an opinion about my own body.
Yeah.
There's someone out there with a degree who knows more about my body than I do. Like, I feel
And
like that
that's
is
what
parallel to the,
that's what I'm rebelling against, I think, is this cowardice I see in people who won't say anything objective about anything. They will
from their
not.
own perspective. They'll have to be like, well, so and so said.
Yeah, but
Right.
like our own perspective is the only objective fucking thing we have available.
No, I
So,
know.
and if you never, and you have to practice the art of saying certain things. And how are you going to ever achieve certainty if you don't like say things with clarity and certainty at the risk of being wrong?
Yeah.
I also had the thought while I was listening to you that um, these people, like Roland, like Rick Doblin, they have a much more direct experience of the 60s and the
Oh yeah, that's true.
and the kind of insanity and ridiculousness that psychedelic enthusiasts engaged in those times.
So they're wary.
And so they are very wary of how it went the first time and how much time got wasted by embracing these things in a very immature and irresponsible way. So they are like they have that much more present in their minds than you and I do, because we didn't live through that. We didn't see these very irresponsible uses of LSD, for example.
Well, our naivete is both a liability and an asset, because it's a liability in the sense that, obviously we didn't see these things, and so we're liable to repeat the same mistakes. But it's also an asset in the sense that the world may have changed, and that some of the things that used to be mistakes might not be mistakes anymore, or they might play out differently. So we have the benefit of not having to be worried. We can
Yeah.
just do it and see what happens, because a lot has changed. So much has changed. It's almost like it's a whole new game. I don't know. It's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much the lessons carry across. I don't know. I mean, I'm saying I don't know. They could, or they might not. There's no way to find out, or there's one way to find out, I should say. Um,
I think it's just like, in terms of freeing our mind, we all have a part to play. And I think Roland Griffiths is doing fucking great. I'm so happy to see Jordan Peterson using his platform to just openly say, look at these psychedelics. This is probably the most important fucking thing happening in reality right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna spend 2.5 hours showing my million-person crowd how staggering these substances are, and our part, or my part to play, is much more direct, and that's a freedom our younger generation has, is we don't have to worry about being judged by our peers. We can
No.
just we can just directly have these fucking experiences and write trip reports for each other and make content and make art and make technology inspired by our experiences, and we can just like get going with it. But our relative freedom is based on the work that our forefathers have done and are still doing on our behalf.
Yeah. Dude, that's brilliantly put. I think we're gonna have to call it right there because my computer has 4%.
Oh
Um,
shit.
unfortunately, and I don't have the solar panels set up yet because it's fucking cloudy right now. Um, but that was
Well, you'll have to prepare better next time.
well. I'm iteratively I'm getting better at this van life thing. This one went better than I expected because I didn't think my internet was going to work as well as it did, but it worked great. So that's good.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah. This summer, man, we're fighting for our
yeah,
pod, building
yeah,
this fucking pod.
we're learning how to do it good though. I mean, we're developing the like because now we can have this experience to go do it in different locales. We already have
Yes.
this set up, so yeah, sick man. Well, I will
Okay.
end my voice recording.
Okay. I'll see you soon. I'll see you soon.
All right, see ya.